Imagine you're standing in a forest 10,000 years before the first city was ever built. No roof, no fire that stays lit, no dry clothes. And then the sky opens up. Not for an hour, not for a day, but for weeks. This is the monsoon. This is the rainy season. And for our ancient ancestors, it wasn't a weather event. It was a test of survival itself. Could ancient humans actually survive? When we think about what threatened early humans, we picture lions, saber-toothed cats, venomous snakes. But for most of human prehistory, the single greatest killer wasn't a predator at all. It was exposure. Hypothermia doesn't need freezing temperatures to kill you. Wet skin, combined with wind and temperatures as mild as 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 degrees Celsius, can drop core body temperature dangerously fast. A rainy season didn't just mean discomfort, it meant weeks of compounding risk. Wet firewood, wet clothing if they had any, wet ground to sleep on. Every single one of those problems stacked day after day could kill a healthy adult, let alone a child or an elder. And it wasn't just the cold. Rain brought flooding which destroyed food stores, washed away trails, and turned rivers into unpredictable, swollen threats. It bred insects. It rotted meat faster. It made hunting harder because animals hide and tracks disappear. In short, the rainy season attacked every single survival system ancient humans depended on all at once. So how did they not just survive, but adapt and even thrive? Here's where the story gets interesting. Ancient humans weren't wandering around, exposed and unprepared. Archaeological evidence shows shelter building goes back at least 400,000 years, long before Homo sapiens even existed. Early hominins used natural shelters first, caves, rock overhangs, dense tree canopies. But as humans spread into environments without convenient caves, they got inventive. Excavations across Europe have uncovered structures built from mammoth bones and hides dating back over 20,000 years. These weren't crude lean-tos, they were engineered, bones arranged in circular load-bearing patterns to support layers of hide that could shed water. In tropical regions where monsoon seasons could last months, humans built raised structures, platforms elevated off flood-prone ground, a technique still used today by indigenous groups in Southeast Asia and the Amazon. Elevation solved two problems at once. It kept people dry above ground level, and it kept them safer from snakes, insects, and rising water. The key insight here is this. Ancient humans didn't fight the rainy season head-on. They designed around it. Shelter wasn't a luxury. It was survival infrastructure refined generation after generation. If shelter was the shield, fire was the lifeline. Controlled fire use dates back at least 1 million years, and by the time we're talking about rainy season survival in any organized society, fire wasn't just for warmth. It was medicine, protection, and a food processor rolled into one. But here's the problem. Fire and rain are natural enemies, so how did they keep it burning? The answer is fire maintenance culture, something almost lost to modern life, where we take ignition for granted. Ancient communities didn't just light fires, they protected them. Fires were kept inside shelters, under overhangs, in dugout pits lined with stone to retain heat and block wind and water. Some groups maintained a single central fire for the entire rainy season, never letting it fully die, because relighting a fire from scratch in soaked conditions was extraordinarily difficult without modern tools. This is also where dry fuel storage becomes critical. Evidence from multiple prehistoric sites shows deliberate wood drying and storage practices. Essentially, ancient humans were stockpiling fuel before the rains hit. The same logic behind why we stack firewood under a roof today. Fire meant dry warmth. It meant the ability to cook food that would otherwise spoil or carry parasites. And critically, it meant psychological survival. Light and warm in the middle of weeks of grey, relentless rain. Here's something most people get wrong. They assume ancient humans lived hand to mouth, hunting and gathering only what they needed for that day. In reality, seasonal planning was one of the most sophisticated survival strategies our ancestors developed. Long before agriculture, humans were practicing food preservation, smoking meat over fire, drying fruits and tubers in the sun before the rains came, storing nuts and seeds in sealed containers, woven baskets coated in resin, or pits lined with clay to keep moisture out. In regions with predictable monsoon seasons, entire migration and gathering patterns were built around the rain. Groups would move to higher ground before flooding season. They'd intensify hunting and food gathering in the weeks before the rains, essentially building a stockpile to get through the leanest, wettest months when hunting became far less productive. This is survival through foresight, not luck. Ancient humans read the sky, the animal behavior, the plant cycles, and they planned months ahead, the same instinct that today drives us to stock up before a storm. Let's talk biology for a second, because human bodies aren't naturally built for cold, wet conditions the way, say, a bear's is. We don't have thick fur. We don't have blubber. What we do have is something arguably more powerful. Adaptability, sweat glands, and crucially, the ability to make and wear clothing. Clothing changes everything. Evidence from lice DNA, yes, lice, suggests humans began wearing clothing somewhere between 83,000 and 170,000 years ago. That's a critical technology for rainy season survival, because insulated, layered clothing traps warm air against the skin even in wet conditions, especially when made from animal hides treated with fat, which naturally repels water. But let's be honest, this wasn't easy street. Skeletal remains from various prehistoric populations show clear evidence of seasonal stress. Bone growth interruptions called Harris lines, which form when the body is under nutritional or physical stress, often linked to harsh seasonal periods. Infant and elder mortality spiked during difficult wet seasons in many ancient populations, a grim but honest reminder that survival wasn't guaranteed. It was earned, sometimes at a devastating cost. If there's one thing that made rainy season survival possible, it wasn't fire or shelter or food storage alone, it was cooperation. Humans are, biologically, some of the most socially wired creatures on Earth. Groups shared shelter space, split labour for fire maintenance and food prep, and pooled stored resources. Children and the elderly, the most vulnerable during harsh conditions, were protected by group structure, not left to fend for themselves. Anthropological studies of modern hunter-gatherer societies who still live seasonally similar lifestyles in places like the Amazon and Central Africa show exactly this pattern. Rainy seasons are met with tighter social cohesion, more shared shelter, and coordinated labour. It's very likely ancient humans operated the same way, because the individuals who cooperated during hard seasons were the ones who survived to pass on their genes. In other words, the rainy season didn't just test physical survival skills, it tested and strengthened the social bonds that define us as a species. Let's bring it back to the question, could ancient humans survive a rainy season? The honest answer, yes, but not easily and not without cost. It demanded shelter engineering, disciplined fire maintenance, months of food planning, adapted clothing and tight-knit cooperation. Every single piece had to work together. Miss one, let the fire die, run out of stored food, sleep exposed for one too many nights, and the consequences could be fatal. But here's the real truth, the one that should change how you see this entire story. Ancient humans didn't just survive the rainy season, they engineered survival systems so effective many are still used by indigenous communities today. Raised shelters, fire pits, food smoking and drying, communal labour. These aren't primitive stopgaps, they're time-tested technology, refined over hundreds of thousands of years of trial, error and hard-won knowledge. The rainy season was one of nature's harshest recurring tests. And generation after generation, ancient humans didn't just pass it, they got better at it, until survival became strategy and strategy became culture. So next time it rains for days and you're annoyed you can't get the Wi-Fi signal outside, remember, somewhere thousands of years ago, someone was tending a fire under a mammoth-bone shelter, making sure their people made it to the dry season. And because they did, you're here to watch this video. If you found this fascinating, subscribe. Let me know in the comments what ancient survival story you want uncovered next. I will see you in the next one.